Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maverick Mystic Arts Podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing the quality of wandering like a cloud. So this is a transient aspect of the path, and at this stage what we end up doing is leaving behind structures. So of course part of this is leaving behind the structure of, say, monastic life, if you were a monk or something like that, and you step outside of the temple, outside of the dojo, outside of the paradigms that you've used for your spiritual development up to that point, right? Because all of these things, these are all anchors, and while they can be supremely helpful up to a certain stage of development, they can also hold us back a fair bit, right? So at this stage you leave the known, and step by step you begin to wander through the unknown. Okay, and the value in this is pretty astronomical. So we want to look at a few different aspects of this and why this is helpful for spiritual growth. Those of you who have been following the channel know that I am living the van lifestyle of living at this particular time in my life. So we want to explore where the spiritual merit in that is, as well as the merit in living in a static location as well, because there's stuff that can be said, pros and cons for each. So when we are living a transient lifestyle, right, every trail, for example, that I'm on right now is brand new. Everywhere you go is brand new. And the result of this is that the mind is constantly mapping, right? It's never looking at the places you are and falling asleep or thinking about other things. So the sheer style of living, right, it is awakening, it brightens up the life, and it forces you into a type of present awareness within the situation, right? This enlivens the life force element within the body, the aspect of life force within the mind, within the astral body, the physical body. Because everything is new, the mind is constantly reaching out, stretching out into the environment to essentially to map, to get to know, to explore, right? And this is a very, very useful tool, because as this starts to bake in, you can then go into living perhaps more static styles of life and still bring this brand new, everything's new experience into normal life as well. So I've chatted, if anyone listened to the episode with Dylan McKinnon, I think it was number 7 maybe, we were discussing sort of rites of passage, and one of his favorites to encourage people to explore was hitchhiking, assuming that you had the actual skills developed to do that safely, right? So when you're on the road all the time, right, or when you're living that transient lifestyle, your decision making has to increase, right? The lack of knowns, it forces a type of decision making. The lack of knowns forces a type of surrender into embracing more and more fully the conditioning factors of the present moment, right? When you have nowhere to go back to, right? When your day, when your time is not punctuated with start and end, right? It's not punctuated with, okay, I get back home, rest, recover, then I go to the next activity, then I go back. When your day isn't punctuated with that, your relationship with time changes. You break time. You break free from time. And, months can go by, years can go by, and you have no idea really, right? Because you're not doing an activity and going back. You just go somewhere and do a thing, and then you're off to your next place to do a thing. So there's no In the mind, there's no end. There's no, okay, activity over, right? You're just living in a style of continuity. And this type of continuity is really, really valuable when we start moving through and continuing on with the spiritual journey. Because everything the mind latches onto, everything it sticks to, this inhibits further progress in surrender, right? It inhibits further progress into the infinity qualities of deep Akashic work, and the infinity qualities of non-dualistic light type work, and all the spectrums when you work through the Akashic nature of the Kabbalah, and you're working with high dimensions of spheric exploration, constellational exploration, evocational exploration. The sticking qualities of the mind, that's what holds you back, right? So when you can bake into your way of life aspects of this non-stickiness, of this continuum, this through flow, that can be just tremendously supportive in a positive way to the further spiritual release and dissolution as you continue moving on and on. Okay, so this is just, there's so much that could be said on this, and we're going to explore a couple other things. So when you are in a constant state of motion, right, that is essentially like analogous to the non-stickiness of the mind. Okay, you could say that the stability of the mind, right, finding that like ultimate stabilization of mind, or the absolute stillness that exists underneath all movement, is actually the non-sticking of the mind to anything. So it's absolute movement that is absolute stillness, and that's where you get the dichotomy that occurs. And as you start to experience this more and more, where stuff touches in to the mind but the mind doesn't impose on it, you get this very smooth type of flow in your experience. And this is something that we can always be exploring more and more of. Now, as we keep progressing, right, with our meditation, and as we continue to touch into more and more refined states, and beyond that through like qualitative essence and so much more. I don't know if you can hear the river down there, but there is a river down there. Lots of mosquitoes. As you start to touch into more and more refined states, to enter these states can require a very clean environment, right? Clean diet, clean astral habits, physical habits, mental habits. And the things that detract from that cleanliness would be things like normal, everyday personal interactions, poor food, poor air, poor water, all the pollutants of mind, emotion, and body, right? And this will make it much more difficult for us to find resonance with and then stabilize a relationship with very refined layers of, the cosmos, and very refined layers of, fractals of identity and such. So to be able to float through the environment without being stuck to a location, and to habitual relationships with environment and with people, with emotion, with thought, and everything that happens when you're in the same place, how things start to ingrain and coalesce on themselves and accumulate on themselves. This allows us to kind of continue working with more and more refined alchemy, right? Because we're not getting stuck. Now, that said, you can develop a tremendous amount of skill alchemizing lower densities, right? And you can develop a very, very wonderful life and wonderful skill in that paradigm. However, to really, break through to deeper and deeper or more and more refined aspects, time in retreat, time in wandering can be very, very necessary. And then once you've touched into those places, once you've touched into that higher resonance, those more refined relationships with everything that we're always discussing, then you can bring those back into the more dense realms, sort of more normal humanistic types of exploration. Okay? And this is sort of why you would have, a retreat hut in your backyard, or however you like to do that stuff, to go on retreats a couple times a year for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever works for you, is so that you can really refine and retreat in that purity of environment, mentally, astrally, vitally, right? That purity of environment that allows for deep Akashic equanimity, so you can touch into that infinity and work on that ascension, work on that refinement. Then you can, once you start to stabilize those relationships, you can then start adding, we could say, resistance to them, resistance to these new relationships, through bringing them into a daily life type of situation, through bringing them into normal astrally dense types of interactions and habitual environments and all of that fun stuff. So you can start to look at normal life as resistance to these other states of being. And every time the resistance wins, that's a good indication that there's a lot more release work to be done and stabilization work within that space, so you can bring it into the normal environment, right? But the need to flux between purity of environment and less purity of environment, this is a really interesting way to explore this stuff. Okay, so the life of a more normal householder has tremendous benefits for stabilizing alchemy within a certain bandwidth. Okay, then you go into retreat and you learn how to work alchemically within more refined bandwidths, right? More refined awareness, more refined akasha, because there's no busyness other than what you bring with you. Okay, and because of that, you can go deeper. And then you can bring that purity back into the busyness of the normal world. And you see sort of where you're at. What are you able to stabilize? What pitfalls do you fall into? And then you start looking at your resilience, right? How resilient is that alchemy in more and more intense situations, right? Or busy situations or negative situations. And can you sustain your relationship with very refined release in more and more dense situations? Okay? And then you start to explore basically, is your equanimity, is your release evolved enough that you can be within the, what you might consider the hell realms, but without having it affect you? Check out these, in the mountains, the colors of the flowers really kind of pop out. So these are quite nice. Anyway, that's the beginnings of a talk, a lecture on the value of transience when it comes to spiritual growth, and how you can interplay transience with that deeper, or transience with that more refined alchemy, and then bring that into static location and environment and really start to suss out where you need to work and what your resistances are, and how you can really start to merge high-level practice and more normal type of life. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for your time. If you're interested in training, please check out the website, links in the description. And we have a Hermetic Alchemy, Qi Gong and meditation program, a Tai Chi program, and the Q&A reference library called the Zenden. That is a video Q&A reference library. Questions that you have about the training and other topics, I throw video answers up for you there. to help you out with the training from that end. All right, thanks for your time. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye.